All right. So one thing that I know about football is Dennis Allen knows defense. Welcome everybody to another exciting episode of Under the Dome. I'm your host Alan Ulrich here with my son, who is filling in for Bob, who is still in Charlotte. Bob was at the game, and he is not. He was not going to be able to make it back to the show in time between catching airlines and all these other things. So Matt's filling in for him. Matt, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing quite all right. I'm doing very all right.
All right. So we were talking right before we went on air about the Saints game last night. We also were talking about the Falcons Packers game from Sunday night or Sunday afternoon.
Mhm.
I want to talk about the Carolina game too, but I kind of want to start. Let's talk about the Packers first, since everybody saw the Carolina game last night. Let's talk a little bit about the Packers Falcons game first, kind of setting the stage for what the Saints can do against the Packers.
Yeah. The Saints will get a bit of a bit, bit of a break for their defensive line because David Bakhtiari, their standout left tackle, he didn't play last week, and there's a chance he might not play this upcoming Sunday. They're also their All-Pro left guard, Elton Jenkins, I think it's pronounced. He got hurt during that game, and it's expected that he is also not going to be available for that game. So the Saints could be facing a weakened offensive line.
Well, that's good because we have a weakened offensive line, so we got to, our defense is going to have to probably carry this game.
Yeah.
Look, I watched that Falcons game. I was going back and forth. I had two different TVs going. I had the Fox broadcast, the Falcons Packers game on one TV, and I was coming and watching the Chiefs and the Jaguars. And the reason I'm bringing that up, I want to talk a little bit about struggling offenses across the league. If you watch that Chiefs game, it was also a field goal fest. The Jaguars, with all the weapons they've got now, they got Calvin Ridley. This was supposed to be the big year that Travis Etienne takes his step forward, that Trevor Lawrence takes his step forward. They can only manage field goals too, in large part because their offensive line struggled. I noticed that the Chiefs were having a hard time executing their offense. Wide open receivers dropping passes, blocking problems, shooting themselves in the foot with penalties. We're going to talk about the Saints' problems too, but I want to just stress to everybody it's not just the Saints that are having these problems. Yeah, you got Dallas who's rolling the Jets, who the Jets were supposed to have this great defense, and it's not showing up right now. Sauce Gardner is not playing at the level of Marshawn Lattimore. He's not even playing at the level he was last year. Um, there's a lot of things that are going on in the league right now that you can attribute a lot to the fact that starters don't play very much in preseason, very few padded practices. So as a result, you're seeing teams struggle to get offenses rolling, and defenses seem to be doing really well. Do you feel that that is an accurate assessment?
I'm sorry.
I said, do you feel that's an accurate assessment
Yeah.
that
Yeah, I really
that
do think.
offenses struggle?
Yeah, I really do think so because I mostly watched I bought the NFL Plus thing and got Red Zone, so I watched plenty of offensive struggle. I mean, you look at the Bengals with Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase. That exciting offense. They are struggling getting out to the gate because Joe Burrow. I mean, he is dealing with the calf injury, but he's also showing a lot of rust. I mean, Jamar Chase is having a bad couple of games. I mean, you got some other teams also struggling. I mean, last week the Ravens looked out of sync, and Their offense was struggling against the Texans defense. I mean, you have very, very few teams playing great offense outside of Miami. Outside of Miami, who are just kind of different, and I guess San Francisco, but though that's something a little different. But for the rest of the league, they're getting slow starts.
Well, yeah, and the reason why I'm bringing all this up is you look at that Falcons Packers game. You know, there was plenty of opportunities for Green Bay to put this game away. They couldn't do it. They let the Falcons hang around, and eventually the Falcons scored, 10, 11 points, I think, in the fourth quarter to pull that game out? Yeah. So it's just the nature of what is happening in the NFL right now. There is no really dominant team. I'm not buying Dallas. Dallas played the Jets and the Giants. Okay, I don't think Dallas can beat Philadelphia, and Philadelphia is struggling. Philadelphia is taking a little bit of time to get going. You see New England. I watched the Patriots. Speaking of the Dolphins, I watched that Patriots-Dolphins game. That offensive lineman did make that first down. I don't care. He made that first down. I think they wanted to end that game. But anyway, it was an incredible play. I'm sorry. It was like big man with football. I'm all for it. Let's see him get that first down.
Yeah.
That was a great pitch back when he knew he wasn't getting that first down. So, that. Go ahead.
I know you were laughing at Bill Belichick just spiking that challenge flag. As soon as the ref looked at him, he's like,
"Yeah, he threw it at his feet." Yeah. And you could read Belichick's lips the whole time. That's a fucking first down. It's just. Yeah. But you wasted 3 quarters to get to the point where you're starting to move the ball and rally and everything else. I mean, that. So again, it's. Like what we're seeing with the Saints, struggle in the first half. All of a sudden, they seem to get their act together in the second half, make the adjustments, and they start rolling after this. So I think there's plays to be made. I think, first off, the defense is playing lights out, and the defense is going to make plays to keep Green Bay from scoring touchdowns. I don't think the Packers receivers can get past the Saints secondary. I don't think the Packers' offensive line can adequately block the Saints' front seven. The only question is, how does the Saints' offense match up with the Packers' defense? And that's where I'm going to go with this next question. How do you see the Saints' offense matching up with the Packers' defense?
Well, sadly, offensive line does not get a break in terms of facing good defensive lines because they got guys like Kenny Clark, Rashawn Garrett. They drafted everyone's favorite draft crush, Lucas Van Ness. They do have some speed and linebacker with ex-Falcon Navarre Campbell and Quay Walker. So they have a bit of a matchup to them. The key, I think, is going to be, of course, is the Saints' weapons getting open quick enough versus that Packers secondary. Their corners, I think, are good. Not great, but they are good. Jair Alexander's pretty good. And Rasul Douglas, he's pretty good too. He's at his best in zone coverage, not man coverage. But I think the weakness of that team is definitely the safeties. They definitely can be picked on. I mean, there were plenty of times where I felt like Mac Hollins for the Falcons did not fear these guys. He was willing to body these guys up. So I think, if we can buy Carr just enough time, he's going to attack that secondary and get some big pass plays out of it.
So then let me ask you this, because that's the question I was having. How good are the Packers defenders at creating pressure, given the Saints' struggles in the offensive line? And I want to talk about that next as well. But given the Saints' struggles on the offensive line, how good are they at creating pressure? I didn't think they created great pressure against the Falcons. I thought they got some pressure. The problem they had was the Falcons could run the ball on them.
Yeah.
So, how effective are the Packers? Is the Packers front line against the Saints offensive line?
I think they're fine. They're not great, but they're not bad. They're fine to good. Like week one, they were going against their favorite punching bag, the Chicago Bears, and
Yeah.
their offensive line was hit or miss. I mean, on the right side it looked fine, but on the left side there was clearly some major problems. Against the Falcons, there were times I felt Desmond Ritter had time to kind of survey the field. There were I felt like there were a good bit of times where he could kind of look a little bit and go to his third and fourth options at times. And there were times where he clearly there was guys coming after him, so he had to get rid of the ball.
Okay. Well, because the Falcons able to run the football so well, we saw that Jamal Williams is going to be out for a few weeks with a hamstring injury.
Mm-hmm.
They Dennis Allen said today that he held out Kendre Miller this past week because it was a short week. He didn't want him to have a setback, but he should be a full go at practice this week. Taysom Hill, of course, is a secret weapon. Not so secret weapon. Taysom Hill can pound out the tough yards. I think Taysom Hill can have a big game against the Packers. But can Kendre Miller step up in the absence, or is it going to have to be Tony Jones?
I think he can. I think if he's a full go, no real major lingering effects for him. I think he can definitely punish that Packers defense. I think he can show that why he was a third round pick, why the Saints really trusted. Preseason just feels not just feels a bit of an illusion just because he was mostly around with the twos and threes. Well, mostly with the twos. He didn't run with the starters, and those twos were getting rocked the entire time, so there was no run lanes. So I want to see how it's going to look with some run if he has a couple of run lanes to go.
Well, we're okay. So that leads us to the offensive line. One of the things that's been missing, I think, in the attack has been the lack of a screen game. The offensive line takes a lot of discipline to become a screen team. The Saints with Aaron Brooks and Deuce McAllister, believe it or not, struggled running the screen pass. Drew Brees comes along, and suddenly, with Pierre Thomas, he could miss on the screen pass. In fact, you can call it the Pierre Thomas play.
Yeah.
I don't think Jamal Williams is really your screen running back, but I think Kendre Miller can be. Do you think this offensive line can run the screen pass now if Kendre Miller is effective to create that space in those lanes?
I think so. I think he has still a lot to show as a pass catcher because that wasn't what he was asked to do at TCU. He was just ground and pound guy, and I'm kind of curious to know how he's kind of developed. I don't think they'll go more to the screen game once he comes back. I think it'll be more of we're going to have him primarily run the ball.
Well, I think they need to start running the screen game because I think that's part of the problem that that Carr is having. He's taking 3-step drops. Maybe 5-step drops at best, but because the pressure's on him so fast, he doesn't have time to go into a 7-step drop. One time he tried to step up and he got sacked. It's frustrating because I think they need to bring that kind of play back just to slow the rush down. It's that is the missing link right now. And throwing a couple of passes to Miller, and when Kamara comes back, of course, the wheel routes, the arrow routes, all those things will help.
Mm-hmm.
But you've got to be able to get the pressure off of the offensive linemen. The biggest thing I see going on with the offensive line is um, they seem to have a communication problem. I know about Penning, okay, but Penning wasn't even the worst offensive lineman out there last night.
Yeah.
Hurst was far better. Far worse. Hurst was far worse, and Ruiz had a bad game. Ramczyk gave up the first sack of the night. So it's everybody who are having problems. But the biggest problem I see is the offensive line is not communicating because there's so many stunts that seem to throw them for a loop. They don't know who to pick up when a team runs a stunt. And all it takes is one defender to hide behind the stunt, and then all of a sudden he's rushing clean right into Derek Carr. So, yeah, I'm not going to go Ralph Marlboro. I know it's Derek Carr, not David Carr. But, that's why I feel like a screen pass game can help out a lot, because with a screen game, you take that pressure off, you're inviting the rush in, you're dumping the ball behind them. They're playing a soft shell anyway. You have a good chance to get your blockers out front, get some yardage downfield, and then it changes the way defenses are playing you right now, because they're less likely to run those stunts because they might get sucked in on the screen right behind them. So, I mean, your thoughts on this. What do you think is the biggest problem with the offensive line right now?
It's not just I think it is a little bit of communication, but it's also there's a little bit of limit. Like, I think Hurst is just holding it down until Pete is in shape. I think they want to bring Pete back into the starting lineup because his ceiling is higher than Hurst. Hurst is like, you know what you're going to get out of him. He's a solid starter. He's a guy that you can put him in the starting lineup and go, okay, he's fine. But Pete, he's clearly, he's the better player, but he's not in shape. He's not, and they're worried he's going to get hurt.
And he can't stay healthy.
Yeah, and they're worried they're just going to have to throw Hurst back in there because Pete's going to have to wait a month and nurse like a stubbed toe or something.
Yeah.
So I think, not just communication, but also just continuing to work on their technique is probably going to have to be the key.
Well, yeah, and to me, running the football. I thought that last night they seemed to have the plan. We're going to run the ball down your throat. Jamal Williams gets hurt. That plan kind of gets thrown to the side, and then they start throwing the ball every down. And once they started throwing the ball every down, it was like the Panthers just started teeing off on the Saints offensive line, putting pressure on Carr, making him check down, don't let him get into a groove. The interception was frustrating because I felt that Carr was trying too hard to throw a touch pass instead of just really firing it in there and trying to drop it in the bucket like he does on the bombs. And I felt like that ball floating up there was enough for Von Bell to make the jump and pick that off.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That was probably the lowest point of the game.
Mm-hmm. It also kind of felt like he knew he had to get rid of it, and he just kept looking at Chris Olave. Like, you could see in his mind, it's like, I got to get rid of it, got to get rid of it, got to get rid of it. And he felt like he had that small window he wanted to hit, and like you said, try to throw a touch pass, and it just didn't happen.
He didn't step into the throw at all. He was on his back foot, and he lofted it. As soon as that ball left his hands, I'm like, oh, it's a terrible pass. I didn't even know where he was going with it, and I'm like, that's a terrible pass. So let's talk about the Panthers game because we're kind of walking into it. But I wanted to get the Packers stuff out the way first because there's a lot to talk about in this Panthers game. So let's talk about the offense first, and then we'll talk about the defense second.
Yeah.
Offensively, they give you glimmers that he's got it figured out. Once they figured they could pound the ball with Taysom Hill and that the Panthers could not stop it, they kept going to it and going to it and going to it and getting a lot of yardage.
Yeah.
Then on 3rd and 2 from midfield, everybody knows the play I'm talking about. You've been pounding the ball all game, all half. You decide to try and throw a pass on 3rd and 2, and when Carr tries to step up, he gets an 11-yard sack. It was a mind-boggling decision because that was the play I felt that gave Carolina life. You had all the momentum at that point. It was frustrating. And that frustration was also, I saw in the red zone. I don't expect Jimmy Graham of 2013 or 2011 or anything like that. But what I do expect is Jimmy Graham to be an option in the red zone. He's not even on the field unless they're going to run the ball. Why do you think they're not throwing it to Jimmy Graham or using him in goal line situations at least as a decoy? Why do you think they keep trying to throw it to guys like Olave and Thomas and just be, for lack of a better word, predictable at this point?
Yeah. I'm starting to wonder if he was out there running with the first team red zone. That's my first question. When they were in training camp and they were running red zone offense, who were the personnel they were throwing out there? Who were the guys out there? Because I feel like Jimmy Graham should at least be lined up out wide, whether to the left or to the right side, where defenses have to pay attention to him, have to key for him, and then you sneak in a guy like Olave or someone while they're diverting all their attention to covering the 6'7" behemoth on the side. Because I don't even know if he was even out there for any red zone plays outside of the run situations.
He was out there for the running plays only. I'm just like, hey, put Jimmy Graham, line him up outside the numbers. You're inside the 10. Line him up outside the numbers. Make a cornerback walk out there and cover him and see what that defense does. I think that's where Carmichael's having his problems. I think he and Carr need to get together and sit there and go through the plays just like
Breeze
and Peyton and Carmichael did the Saturday night before. Go through red zone plays. What red zone plays you like? Because to me, I mean, you've got to get Graham involved on the goal line, or just the tight ends in general. Foster Moreau, Juwan Johnson. Get those guys out there. Spread that defense out. I know you're trying to protect Carr, but you can get him in the shotgun. Spread him out, and I think Kamara coming back will help, but you got to use him right too.
Yeah.
Have Kamara fake motion, that kind of stuff. Shift Kamara around, but you got to get out there and you've got to make the plays to get more opportunities for Carr to get easy looks. Right now, the problem they're having is Carr is being forced to run difficult plays in the red zone.
Yeah.
Things that when it looks like the defense and the offense are bunched together, and if they can't pound it in, which they did last night, but they can't pound it in, it's like almost like there's no options for them.
Yeah.
The only time you saw Taysom Hill, you saw him out there one time, and that was it.
Yeah. I feel like they're not using these physical receivers out there because look at with the Panthers. You got Dante Jackson, who's not a physical corner, that it felt like Michael Thomas could have his way with him. He could out-muscle him. And then you had C.J. Henderson, who was an absolute liability the entire time. If you can't put your big guys against either one of those corners and force them to have to defend it and out-muscle them, then you got to see what's going on. I mean, I don't know if Pete Carmichael just has like this rainy day jar full of red zone plays sitting on the top of his fridge, but he needs to start busting some of those plays out and try and get some red zone offense working. Because if they're going to play the run on, if you're inside the 10, then you need to start getting a little creative.
Well, and I think Dennis Allen got pissed off last night and said, you know what, we're going to pound this rock and you're going to get it. We're going to make this offensive line work, because I do think they're influenced by the struggles of the offensive line in the passing game. But you're not putting the offensive line in good positions to take advantage of mismatches in the passing game by being more creative and creating open areas where defenses now, they kind of have to sit back. They can't just tee off on Carr because, hey, man, a screen pass is going to come right behind me. Or, hey, he's getting rid of that ball too quick. That's what I want to see. I want to see more creativity in the red zone. I don't have a problem with them 20 to 20. Most of the time, they're running pretty good plays. I just have a problem with, in the red zone, they don't seem to be they just don't seem to be taking advantage of the opportunities that are presented to them. They're running very vanilla plays. And I agree, Calvin. I think you put Graham on C.J. Henderson, and that's a touchdown every time.
Yeah.
Now, I will say this: the Tony Jones play, I don't have a problem with them throwing to Tony Jones at that point, because they hadn't been throwing to the backs hardly at all anyway. That was a case of the rush got to Carr before Tony Jones had an opportunity to turn around, because he was wide open. He just had his back to Carr, so he couldn't see it. But I think that if that play works and you don't settle for a field goal there, we're talking about a different kind of game. All right, so let's switch gears. Talk about defense. Saints defense now for 2 weeks. They have now, this is the 10th game in a row going back to last season where they held a team under
20 points.
20 points. Is this defense playing at its best level, or do you think there's room for improvement?
I think it's playing at a damn good level, because there are some interesting stats coming out about the Saints defense. For one, like last year, if you were telling people left and right, oh, the Saints were fifth in sacks last year, or tied for fifth with 48, and they would all give you this confused look like, wait, they have 48 sacks, top five? What is that? But you look at this year, they're really affecting the quarterback even by just rushing 4. Right now they're up to 7. But both Carl Granderson and Cam Jordan are top 5 in pressures for an edge rush, pressures for just defensive line and edge rushers altogether. I mean, Cam Jordan has 12, Carl Granderson has 11, and they're already at the halfway mark from last year in quarterback hits. Last year they only had 34 total quarterback hits. This year, so far in 2 weeks they have 17. So
it's. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I think this defense does have another gear they can switch into, but they're playing at a great level where I don't think there's really much room for improvement, in my opinion.
Well,
I don't know really what to improve.
Okay, well, I'll tell you where I think they can improve. I think Paulson Adebo needs to get better, more consistent in his coverage. I think he played extremely well against the Titans, but I thought he kind of took a step back a little bit against the Panthers. Granted, it's level competition. I get it, and he's still a developing player. But I thought he could have played more consistently over their cup, because they didn't even go at Lattimore. That shows you the level of respect they had. Lattimore, they just said whoever's on that side of the field, we're not even looking at. I don't think Lattimore even got his jersey dirty yesterday. But Adebo is going to be a target for a while. And then a lot of people were upset that they let Roby go, Bradley Roby go instead, and going with Alontae Taylor as the nickel corner.
Yeah.
I think Taylor has his moments where he is an outstanding run defender. He breaks in the ball so fast. Yes, we will, Anna. Anna wants to talk about the last drive. He breaks in the ball so fast. He is aggressive in his run support. But I think that you are seeing things where, like, Adam Thielen kind of schooled him a little bit on route running because Adam Thielen's a very experienced vet. And he was able to create separation because Taylor is a second-year player still trying to learn the inside cornerback position. Now, one of those catches was an unbelievable one. Taylor is in his hip pocket the whole time. That was perfect coverage, just a great catch by Thielen. But a lot of people some people are trying to point out the stats saying, well, Taylor's giving up the most yardage of the corners and Taylor's doing this and Taylor. Yeah, but they're settling for field goals. They're not getting big plays off of him. Okay? Yeah. I can live with the growing pains because he's not exposing the defense by making mistakes. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson got a lot of receptions caught off of him. And he's hurt now. Did you see that? He tore his pec. He's out indefinitely. Yeah. Bradley Roby gave up a lot of little inside plays too. He wasn't perfect either, and I thought he was weaker on run support than Taylor and less aggressive. Let's be patient with him. I'm going to be patient with him. I'm going to be patient with Penning because I think the upside is too great that you've got to be patient. Yeah. So let's talk about this last drive. I know it sucked because I like the idea of going 8 quarters without giving up a touchdown. And I'll be honest with you, the Saints freely substituted a lot of people. Foskey was out there playing. Passanio was out there playing. I think they had Brzee out there playing along with Malcolm Roach. They were just rotating guys in. They weren't really blitzing or rushing. Everything was just keep it in front of you, make them waste time. I thought when they got on the other side of the 50, they probably were too generous and giving up too much cushion, letting those guys get out of bounds and save clock so they could score that touchdown.
It felt like they were playing, soft two shell. They were just, trying to prevent the deep shot plays and just allowing, dump off passes, but no one be within whoever the dump off guy was for another 10 yards. And they were able to get out of bounds freely, save a lot of clock, and just, eventually continue to move down the field.
Yeah, your goal with a prevent defense, which is what they were playing, they were up by 2 scores. They had to score 11 points to tie, okay? Not 11 points to win. They were looking at the clock, and they said, okay, we're going to let them have a time-consuming drive. If they score a touchdown, who cares? They won't have enough time to get the ball back to get a field goal. But by letting them get out of bounds as much as they did when they got on the other side of the 50, they were able to save clock. So, thank God, first off, we recovered an onside kick. Because you remember, what was it, 2019 against the Falcons? Or was it 2018 against the Falcons on Thanksgiving night? Where they did like 3 onside kicks in a row? Might have been 2020.
That was 2019. I remember
2019. Yeah, I was losing my mind over that, not being able to cover an onside kick. So they were able to cover the onside kick. That was good. And then Taysom Hill put the game away with that one run. He got 11 yards. And it's so funny because the announcers were like, yeah, they've got to be able to hold him here. And if they can use their 2 timeouts, they should have so many seconds left. Just don't let them get a first. Oh, here's a first down, Taysom Hill. I mean, it was just like that. So, yeah, Jim Mora-ish, old Saints-ish, period. Quite a few coaches used to go in that prevent defense. Kicking game. I talked about how this team reminds me of speaking of Jim Mora, the Jim Mora teams of 1991, 1992. Great defense, okay offense, great special teams. They don't beat themselves. Winning a lot of 20-17 kind of ball games. Blake Groupie is like watching Morton Anderson. Every kickoff goes for a touchback. He's hitting field goals no matter where he is on the field. 25 yard, I'm booming it right down the middle. 45 yards, booming it right down the middle. 55 yards, boom, here we go, right down the middle. But Lou Headley, or Heady, is it Headley or Headley? Not Headley Lamar.
Headley. Yeah, it's
okay.
Headley, not Heady.
Okay. He kind of struggled last night kicking. His first punt, put the Panthers in position to score that first field goal of the night. He had a couple other punts that weren't that great. He had a good game last Sunday, not so good game against Monday night. How long is his leash?
It's not that long. I mean, so since we didn't hear reports that Dennis Allen brought in some punters for a workout, so his job's safe. It feels like it's safe for at least one more week. If he has another game like that, if he follows up with the Packers game with another, he's punting like 35 yards and shank punts, and he's putting the opponents in great field position. That's when Dennis Allen is going to tell Loomis, "Hey, give me some punters, bring them in." And you'll probably see Gillikin come back. You'll see. I don't know if that kid from Arizona State is still available. Matt Azaria, he might get brought in for a workout. So he needs to follow up with this with a really good game where he's flipping the field and making it tougher for Jordan Love and the Packers.
Yeah, because part of what makes the Saints defense so good is you make a team go 80-plus yards against them. Kicking out of the end zone, it's 25 yard. They get the ball in the 25-yard line. Teams have a hard time moving the ball, getting those first downs. You need to have a kicker who can flip the field. And I think he can still, because I think he's got that potential. I know they like the idea of an Australian rules kind of kicker now, because he's much more a directional kicker. But sometimes he's out kicking the coverage, and sometimes he's trying too hard to pin him in a corner to reduce the return. But it's resulted in him kicking out of bounds, and that's a challenge. So Blake Grupe continues to look like a great decision, but I'm not so sold on Headley. Okay, let's talk a little bit about receivers then. Michael Thomas, he looks like he's back. Okay, Thomas made some incredible catches, contested catches, took big hits, still made the plays. But let's talk about Chris Olave. Chris Olave is determined to elevate his game to that all-pro level like Michael Thomas did in his second year. Are you seeing that? Do you feel that that's what's happening with Chris Olave? Do you think there's still a little more room to grow that he needs?
I think he still needs to grow a little bit. He's getting better. He's definitely taken a step up from year one to year two. And that catch that he made was probably one of the better examples. That was a contested catch. He's clearly getting held by C.J. Henderson, but the refs swallow their whistles,
Yeah.
and he has great concentration and still makes that catch. That is something rookie Chris Olave was not going to do. That would have been a drop, and we'd be crying for a flag. But
Yeah.
he's starting to be confident in trying to make contested catches. He does look a bit stronger. I still think he has a little more room to grow. I think he still has another gear he can really hit. And once he finds that gear, I think he's going to be a really dangerous wide receiver.
Yeah, I was just getting ready to talk about this, Calvin. So we talked about this a little bit on Twitter today. Olave did something dumb. He made that great catch, but Henderson backed off after he tried to avoid the pass interference call by putting his hands up. But
Yeah,
he, when Olave went down, he popped up and spun the ball like I made the great play, forgetting he's in the NFL, not college. You're not down if you hit the ground. You're only down if somebody touches you. He didn't do that, and that was a fumble.
yeah,
He was lucky that ball went out of bounds because the Panthers' defensive back was ready to jump on it,
that was
which
Von
would have
Bell,
ruined
too.
that. Yeah, which would have ruined that great play if he did fumble it. I pointed out that Alvin Kamara did something similar back in 2017, his rookie year. He
Yeah,
crossed the goal line and he dropped the ball just as he's crossing the goal line, and the official. This is on NFL films. You can see the actual conversation between him and Sean Payton. But the official says, "Listen, he dropped that ball just on the edge of the goal line. It's not enough to overturn it, but." That could be a fumble and a touchback instead of a touchdown.
yeah,
It's something and Sean Payton's nodding like, yeah, I'm gonna get on his ass. And he's like, he goes over to Kamara and talks about it and says, we're good today because we're blowing out whoever they were playing,
yeah.
but
But
eventually that's going to cost you. So he never did it again. Allen needs to have that conversation with Olave.
yeah, yeah. What Kamara did was I call that Deshaun Jackson because again, I remember this on Sunday Night Football. It's Eagles versus Dallas. He had a great, I think it was a great punt return, and he's returning it. Except by the 1 yard line, he drops the ball right before he crosses the end zone, and it's a fumble. Dallas recovers, and the Eagles lose that game. So I know exactly what you're talking about. That's what I call that doing Deshaun Jackson.
Yeah. So, exactly. So yeah, that's the kind of mistake that will end up costing the Saints. Olave's got to pop up and run. Don't worry about the first down. Get the score. Wait to hear the whistle. Yeah, play through the whistle. What's the worst thing that can happen? You have to go walk back to the huddle further away. Make the play.
Yeah.
And the other thing, the last receiver we talk about, how good is Rashid Shaheed? I mean, 2 weeks in a row he runs they call it, just run play. I call it the run forest run play.
Yeah.
People are bitching that Carr needs to hit him in stride, but I point out all the time, Dan Fouts, when he first got Wes Chandler, bastard, when he first got Wes Chandler in 1981, Fouts said he had the hardest time adjusting to throw to Chandler because he was constantly underthrowing him because he didn't know how fast Chandler was. He was so afraid of overthrowing it. It was an underthrow. And it took time. Practicing. He knew exactly how fast Chandler was, so he knew what kind of arc, how much oomph to put into the ball and everything else just so, Chandler will get the ball in stride. I think that's where we're getting to with Shaheed. I just love the fact that he's done it twice. I mean, back-to-back weeks.
Considering he missed over a month of training camp because of a groin injury, and he's the second leading receiver on the team. That is impressive.
Yes.
I think he's very talented.
Extremely. I think he's got room to grow as well. He missed all training camp, so he's got a lot of growing up to do. But, Calvin, I think they're going to try to play more earlier in the game, but I think it's one of these things that they haven't figured out the blocking yet until after halftime. And that's the other part that's frustrating because it takes a little time for him to set up to make that big throw. But, yeah, I would like to see that when they cross midfield. That's when Sean Payton used to take those shot plays. Cross midfield, run some go routes. Let's go. Take the shot deep. Maybe that's what they were going to do at 3rd and 2. They thought they could, suck them in, make them think we're going to run the ball and we're taking a shot play right now. I don't know. It just didn't feel like it. It didn't feel like that was the right time to run a shot play. I think you run a shot play probably early in the first, early in the game, maybe first possession of the third quarter.
Yeah.
Last possession of the second quarter, you take those shot plays. It just, it's. I'd like to see it, and I'd like to see it in the middle of the field, rather than on the sideline. I'd like to see Shaheed split the safeties, and you throw that shot play right down the post, and get the touchdown out of that.
In this chat I'm in, so you know how the Jets they lost Aaron Rodgers and using Zach Wilson, but the Jets are going to be looking for a quarterback. So everyone's saying they should trade Jameis. Well, someone created this lovely image. I know you're gonna love this one.
A December to remember. Wait, is that Jameis?
No, it's Jameis. You know those Lexus events?
Yeah, December to remember.
Yeah.
That would be great, but we have to trade him before December.
Yeah, I know. By
October. That's something I've always wanted the league to change. I wanted to move that trade deadline to, especially since you got 17 weeks, move that trade deadline to after Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
Because to me, by that point, the teams that are competing for a playoff spot, they're the ones that are going to be interested in making a trade at that time. And I also would like to see, I don't know how well this would go over, but I would like to see somehow if you have a guy with a huge contract, okay, that you just want to dump the contract, you could conceivably make the trade that season and get a credit that will count against your next cap if you keep that guy. In other words, you could do a trade for a mercenary, okay? Say you're a team that's that is like say you're the Jets, okay? You're the Jets. Somehow you get your defense organized. You actually put 8 or 9 wins in a row, and you're in a great position maybe to win the division, maybe be one of the top seeds somehow, but you need a quarterback, and you have a team that's, I don't know, that's out of it, that, okay, the Vikings. Yeah, let's say the Vikings, although I wouldn't do this for Kirk Cousins, but let's just say you're the Vikings, and you look at the Vikings, and the Vikings have decided, you know what, we're drafting a quarterback. We're in a position we could get a Caleb Williams, although knowing them, they'll take that kid from South Carolina, Spencer Rattler. It's just, that's how the Vikings draft. But, let's just say the Vikings think they're in a position to take Caleb Williams. You could make the trade for Kirk Cousins. The bulk of his contract counts as a credit. You pay X amount towards your cap this year, and then you have to decide at the end of the year, do you want to keep him or do you want to let him go and have to pay the credit, the following year in cap? some kind of way to make trades happen. So stars
Yeah.
move, I guess, is what I'm trying to come up with.
Mm-hmm.
That would be interesting because, a lot of teams could make a trade for a big guy, especially a team that's losing. And, it allows them to clear space so they can do something. I don't know. I have to think it out more. I mean, wouldn't you like to see more trades in the NFL before the trade deadline and see that trade
Yeah.
deadline later?
Yeah, because you got like the NBA, for example. They have these crazy trade deadline scenarios. You have even hockey and baseball. You see, when a trade deadline hits, it feels like the entire sports media world has to cover all of it. They want to know who's going where, and it makes things interesting. It makes things it drags a lot of attention. I think that's something the NFL wouldn't mind doing. I think, like you said, just working out the kinks to try and propose it, and especially moving a cap so you can move star players. That would be something interesting because it diverts anything that could be happening in the sports world all on you.
Well, yeah, because so many guys you're going, okay, they're not going to move him because there's too much of a cap impact, so they're not going
Yeah.
to move this guy, or a playoff team that's loaded isn't going to make that trade. I mean, I'm not advocating another Los Angeles Rams experiment where they just screw the cap, start grabbing veterans left and right and building a super team. But I think a team that
FM picks.
has an opportunity to make a big move that could help them in the playoffs. I think that would help. Yeah, my everyone's talking about this. We might as well talk about this in the final minutes of the show.
Yeah.
So you saw the video of Michael Thomas and well, first off, isn't Derek Brown the guy who took out Shaq Thomas?
No.
Not Shaq Thomas. Who was that took
Shaq
out?
His last name was the guy who got hurt was Shaq Thompson. He was the guy from
Thompson. Yeah.
2014.
Yeah, he
2014.
Yeah, he was the big pass rusher. Okay. Who hurt him? Who was it that had to flip Penning on his back and ended up rolling underneath Shaq Thompson's leg and broke his leg?
Deshaun Williams.
Okay, that was Deshaun Williams. So,
Yeah.
all right. So I thought it was Brown, but okay, it's Deshaun Williams. I knew it was a big fat guy.
Yeah.
Um,
I remember it was Williams because Derek Brown lines up on the other side. He normally lines up alongside Brian Burns, and I remember he was going up against what's his face? Going up against he was going up against
Ruiz.
Ruiz.
He's the one that got the hands to the face and took the helmet off. I knew that penalty was hands to the face. You just saw the helmet rolling on the ground. I'm like, oh, yep, somebody got hands to the face. All right. So the story was that Michael Thomas somehow got turned around in the field and was walking to the wrong locker room.
Yeah.
And Brown didn't like it and started telling him something. And Michael Thomas had shot something back to him, and he almost got into a fight in the alleyway. Somebody's got a camera filming all this stuff. Very WWE looking thing.
Yeah.
That's apparently the story. And to me, that wasn't even really a fight.
No, it was
I
just,
could tell
it was chirping.
Yeah, I could tell you about a serious fight in Saints history. It involves the Giants. I think I've told this story on this show before. But the Touchdown Club, right, of New Orleans? The Saints have that Welcome Saints luncheon at the end of the preseason every year. That's the Touchdown Club in New Orleans. You know how that club started? Have you heard this story before, Matt?
I have
Have
not
I told
know.
you this before? Okay. Back in 1967, the first year the Saints were in existence, all right, a Giants player, I don't remember his name anymore, but a Giants player when a Saints receiver caught the ball on his sideline, stood up, and gave him a forearm to the face as he came there. Got him good. And this the '60s, the way they used to play the NFL back then.
Mhm.
Took that cheap shot. And one of the Saints players, I think it was Monty Stickles, the tight end, may have been somebody else. It was on a '67 team. He went to the biggest guy on the Saints roster, and that was Doug Atkins, 6'7", 6'8" defensive end. Okay, and he says, Doug, when this game's over with, we're gonna go get him. You with me? And Doug's like, hell yeah, I'm with you. He said, I was so tired I could barely pick up my arms when this guy wants to go fight the bench. So, gun sounds, game's over. They used to end games with a gun, not a whistle. Gun sounds, game's over. I think his name was Hall. But anyway, no, it was Steve Stonebreaker. Sorry, Steve Stonebreaker did this. He's the one that told us. Hall was the one who got hit. But Steve Stonebreaker was the one who told Atkins, I'm going to go get him. Stonebreaker, the linebacker, runs across the field and just finds the first guy, tackles him, and starts wailing on him. Now, he's in the middle of the Giants bench doing this. And he looked up, and Atkins is kind of jogging. There ain't any other Saints players around. He's surrounded by all these Giants players. He's punching on a guy. He says, all hell broke loose. They start fighting all along the sideline. If you go on YouTube and look up the '67 Saints-Giants game, you see a little bit of the fight in the very beginning of the video. But all hell breaks loose. Back then, John Meekum, the Saints owner, used to be on the sidelines, just like Jerry Jones, but he was on the sidelines because he's 26 years old. He's the owner. And the bench is all clear. Saints players start running across. Giants players are fighting. They got 3-4 fights going on in the middle of the field. John Meekum, the owner, is punching Giants players on his way out and stuff like that. I mean, the owner's getting in this fight and everything else. Huge melee. It was like a 15-minute melee, clearing all this stuff, trying to get him out. And the game's over, so you can't penalize anybody. So, the league reviews the tape. They fined Stonebreaker something like $10,000, $5,000, which is a lot of money in 1967. Okay, the Saints fans so loved that he went and did this because you're an expansion team. Teams don't respect you; they're pushing you around and stuff like that. We're going to talk about this in a minute, Teague-Meister. That's fighting words. I think Rashid's faster than Olave. But we'll talk about it in a second. But anyway, the Saints fans so loved what Stonebreaker did that they took a collection and said, we're going to pay your fines. You can fight all you want. We're going to pay your fines. Well, Pete Rozelle, the commissioner, says, you can't do that. That's not legal. It's got to come out of the players. You cannot. You can't have a collection to pay players fines. So he said, well, we're going to do with this money. We're going to form the Touchdown Club in New Orleans, and that's been in existence ever since 1967. So it all goes back to a fight by Steve Stonebreaker. But they used to call that team Boys Town in Cleats because it was full of the rejects and the malcontents and people who just, they didn't get along with anybody. That's who the '67 Saints were, and that's why they were fun. How do you want to respond to this? I think Calvin's pretty good here. Rashid Shaheed versus Chris Olave. Who's the better receiver?
I'd say Olave. I mean, Shaheed is more explosive. I would say he has a more explosive get off on when he starts to break on his routes. But I think Olave has slightly better long speed, and he might be a little better catching. I don't know. I want to see Shaheed get a little more volume before I declare if he's a better receiver.
I think I saw one tweet that said Rashid Shaheed is everything we thought Deontay Harris would be. Um, he's got speed galore, but he's very thin. I worry about him getting hurt actually doing kick returns. I think Olave has better hands. I think Michael Thomas has the best hands. I think Olave is getting to that point. He can become that complete receiver. But right now, I like the idea of it being Thomas, Olave at the X and the Z with Shaheed in the slot because I like the idea of Shaheed having to go against the third best corner. I also like the idea of flipping and putting Olave in the slot because Olave is the better route runner than Shaheed just because he played at a higher level competition. He knows how to sell the routes and he just really breaks on the ball very well. And I also like the idea of putting Thomas in the slot and having Shaheed and Olave out there and run go routes and let Thomas come out underneath and get those, what I used to call the Marcus Colston catches, those seam routes right in the middle of the field to extend drives. So
Absolutely.
This is, by the way, if y'all want to know, this is the 2008 Saints-Packers game. Matthew, where were you for this game? Do you remember? I know where we were.
Yeah, we were at Washington, D.C. for that 7th, 8th grade trip at St. Edwards. I remember that. We missed a chunk of this game because we were doing something.
We went on a tour late. We went to the Iwo Jima Memorial, and that was the iPhone had just come out, and Mr. Tim and I had a BlackBerry. He had an iPhone. We were competing to see who can get faster updates on our phone, and he was kicking the hell out of me. He really was. I couldn't keep up with the game on my BlackBerry. But he was. That's when I discovered. I'm like, okay, I think I'm gonna get me an iPhone next because he had an iPhone 1, and that was 2008. So that was this game.
iPhone 1. I thought that was 2 or 3 that came out by that point.
He might have had an iPhone 3 then because that was the first phone I got was an iPhone 3. So it could have been 2000. I think I got that in 2010 though. So. I think the iPhone came out in 2007, not 2003.
Because by that point in 2008, it was the iPhone 3G came out, and that's when. No, that wasn't when Siri came out. That was the 4G. So, so he might have had the 2 or the 3 by that point.
Yeah, but I had the BlackBerry, the little mouse, little cursor mouse, and then the whole keypad on it. Yeah. Oh, I thought it was the shit. I could get emails and write emails on my phone. I thought that was the best thing in the world. Little did I know. Now I dread emails on my phone. All right, last thoughts. Lots of Saints-Packers highlights have been playing in the back. Last thoughts about the Carolina game and then predictions for the Green Bay game. What did you like best that you saw in that Carolina game?
I felt like there were 3 things I liked best. The first was, of course, the defensive line getting after Bryce Young. I know, outside the last drive, because, that was just –
That's bullshit touchdown. I hate those things, so let's not even talk about that.
Yeah.
In my mind, it was 20-9. That was the final score.
Yeah. But the defensive line was just constantly harassing Bryce Young. They really couldn't get a run game going outside of some lucky Bryce Young scrambles. So I'm glad they're starting to get pressure. They're starting to get the quarterback off their spots and under duress. That to me was the real good part about this defense. Second thing I like, of course, some Taysom Power in the second half. They started to utilize him more. It was starting to work, and you can tell some of those Panthers defenders were getting frustrated. And, of course, all these nerds and all that, football nerds, were mad that the Saints were still using Taysom Power. And it's like, well, until you stop it, we're going to keep using it. And they just couldn't – and they really couldn't stop it. And
that reminds me, did you see that comment from that Eagles guy?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, I mean, well, his little signature line says, A bad take is better than no take at all. Well, mister, that's a bad take.
Yeah.
Taysom Hill had 75 yards and 9 carries. I mean, he just. Anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and a final point I'll say, of course, is we're starting to see good deep passes. I mean, I know Saints fans were clamoring to stretch the ball out. This is why they were really excited when Winston became the star in 2021. It's like we can finally, do deep passes, no more dinking and dunking. And I like Carr throwing a deep pass a little more just because I like how the ball flies off his hands. I love how it travels. I just think it looks better versus Winston throwing it.
He makes better decisions, and he uncorks it at the right time. He
Mm-hmm.
doesn't just try and make a deep pass happen. The play to Shaheed, the play to Olave, which was the turning point for me in that game. Uh, you those are the right moments to let it go. And I know that's hard to say because for so many people, they're like, well, that's terrible. You should throw it whenever you want. Well, you can't be Al Davis out there and we'll take what we want. You got to take what the defense gives you. And if they keep creeping up because they're going to blitz your guys, they're convinced they can dominate your offensive line, and they're going to play a zone, that's the time really to go out there and send somebody on a go route on the sideline, where the worst thing could happen is you overthrow it and it goes out of bounds. You're not throwing it in the middle of the field where everybody is. Um,
Yeah.
it's the right time to throw shot plays. But I'm with Calvin. I think they need to take more shots during the game rather than just the one or two things. But I think those plays will come. But anyway,
Yeah.
go ahead. Keep going.
Yeah. And I'll add one more thing about it, about the Panthers game. I think Penning is improving. I wanted to get to that because well, he
Hmm.
did have that sack he allowed was just, of course, miscommunication. But I'm seeing him get beat less and less on one-on-ones, and starting to see him get a little more aggressive. Not to the level where Teron Armstead was, but you're starting to see some stuff that he didn't do against the Titans. One of which that he's not waiting for. I'm honestly quoting Rev Deuce from Who Dat Confessional. He has a fantastic video breaking down Penning's reps against the Titans if you haven't seen it yet. But Penning likes to wait for guys to come at him at his chest so we can try to absorb and maybe kind of redirect or keep at bay. It's why you don't see his hands come up immediately. He's always in catch mode. Against the
Hmm.
Panthers, you saw him do a little bit of punch and jabs at the chest and kind of fluster his matchup. And that's something I want him to keep doing. I want him to keep, jabbing at his matchup because if he's going against someone like Lucas Van Ness or Rashawn Gary, you don't want him to get under the pads. You don't want him to try and come at you because you're going to get taken down and you're going to have a bad day. You want to get at him. You want to start having those punches and jabs.
Well, yeah, I always said that I think Penning is thinking more than he's reacting.
Mm-hmm.
And I said this last week. It's like quoting Maverick from Top Gun. If you think you're dead, that's what it is. The speed of the NFL is such that you've got to anticipate what that guy is going to do. And if he does something you don't want him to do, you got to make him do it. And that's what made Willie Rofe a Hall of Famer. If a guy goes to the inside, Rofe's going to take you all over to the inside and do a clear out. If he's going to go to the outside, Rove's going to take you for a ride outside, and you get to see what the Saints bench looks like up close and personal because you're not getting to the quarterback. I'm taking you for a ride all the way out by the bench. And Penning's not at that point yet. Penning has to get to that point where he can impose his will on a defender instead of thinking about what is he going to try and do to me and how do I counter it. Um, and I think when that happens, I think that's when you'll see the elite talent. That's the reason why the Saints traded up to get him. Yeah, and I do think the fans are being very hard on Carr. Um, for various reasons. The past 2 years is a good enough reason. With inconsistency at quarterback, what we saw in 19 in for the better part of, I said 19, what we saw for the better part of 16 years with Drew Brees, what you got used to seeing at the quarterback position, you simply aren't seeing that out of Carr yet. And Carr has a bit of a reputation coming from the Raiders, struggling in the red zone. So every mistake he makes is magnified. I ignore the Jameis people because I secretly think some of the Jameis people are rooting for Carr to fail because they want Carr gone, they want Allen gone, they want to get a whole new coaching staff that's going to somehow elevate Jameis and get the team they want. They live in fantasy land. None of that's going to happen. Yeah, it's just not. I mean, if Carr and Allen fail, they've blown up this roster. I mean, there's no way getting around it.
Yeah.
You're going to see all new people in all the positions all over the place. And no one's going to be happy about that. Things I'm happy about, I'm happy with the development of the 3 receivers. I'm happy with the health so far of the players, knock on wood. I love what the defense is doing because, the defense is the reason why we're 2-0, but I'd rather see the defense come out the gate like this than last year where we're like, holy crap, what the hell's wrong with this defense? They can't stop anything while the offense gets on track. I'm very happy with Blake Grupe because, we took a heck of a risk letting Will Lutz go. Well, it looks like it's a great choice because Will Lutz is struggling in Denver. And Grupe, like I said earlier, he's kicking out of the end zone every kickoff. He is booming every field goal. He looks very solid as an NFL kicker. I'm happy with that. My biggest concern, again, offensive line communication. We've got to be able to run the football. I love Taysom Power, but you can't live off of Taysom Power. You've got to get a legitimate running game going. That's one of my biggest disappointments I've seen so far this year. We still can't run the ball well consistently. That as soon as that changes, this looks like a much better team. You saw in that second half when the Saints started running the ball with Taysom Power, even Tony Jones like a legitimate NFL running back, which he's not.
Yeah.
You get the running game going, this offense suddenly starts clicking. They only had, 2 3-and-outs all game yesterday?
I think they only had like 1 or 2. The thing is, the Saints offense so far in 2 games, we're not having those immediate 3-and-outs. They were among the lowest in week 1 with like 18% of drives ending out of 3-and-out. So we're starting to see them, keeping drives alive. It's just more finish. We just need to finish them.
Yeah, we need to finish them with touchdowns, not field goals. We just need to get to be better. And I think it all starts again with the running game. We need to get better at running the football. That's why it's so huge that Miller gets on track. It's big that we get Kamara back and use Kamara properly and mix in Taysom Power. Now, last question before we go for the evening. Do you think the Saints make a move at running back, bringing in somebody off the street like a Lamar Hunt? I knew I was going to say Kareem Hunt. Yeah, not the late Chiefs owner, Kareem Hunt, or, because he went to LSU, we'll bring him up, Leonard Fournette. Or do you think the Saints make a move trying to bring some running back in off the street to possibly, act as that power back? Because they expect Miller to be out for. I'm not. Yeah, Williams to be out for a
Look,
while.
yeah. No, if they, I think the corresponding move they're about to make, they might sign Tony Jones to the active roster because they did just waive Kirk Merritt a few hours ago,
Yeah.
and so now they have two available roster spots.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I would not be shocked if Wednesday you see a report coming out from either Underhill or John Hendricks or some teams reports saying uh, X, Y, and Z players at running back are here for a tryout. Kareem Hunt is probably going to go to Cleveland because of what happened to Nick Chubb. Hopefully, everything turns out fine for him. So he's probably not going to be with the Saints. It's probably just going to. I think if we look, I'm pulling up some of the guys that are available. You got, of course, Leonard Fournette. You got J.D. McKissick, Ronald Jones, who was just cut from Dallas. You still got Darrell Williams, who I think is still available. Let's see. It's very, very slim pickings.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
maybe you could probably get a guy for the practice squad, sign Tony Jones to the promote Tony Jones to the active roster because I felt like he earned it because it wasn't just with the goal line touchdowns. I know someone posted the clips of him, but he was really good at pass protection. He did really well
Yeah.
in blitz.
He did. He did do that. I give him credit for that. He did very well in pass protection. Yeah. Fournette's going to be pretty fat. I don't. I really don't think they would even bring Fournette in.
Yeah.
Too much bad blood between him and the Saints. I don't understand why Williams didn't get more of a shot. If I'm bringing an LSU running back in, that's the guy I'm probably bringing in. Cam Akers with the Rams seems to be on his way out the door. They deactivated him by coach's decision. I don't think he's a special back or anything like that, but it's an interesting name to see out there.
There are teams
So
calling.
that's some. What's that?
I said there are plenty of teams calling for him. I think like the Ravens were
Yeah.
calling for him. I know Jordan Schultz had a good report on that, so I'm not. But yeah, I don't think the Saints are gonna cast a line in that direction. I think the Saints are just gonna work with what they got for just this week, and if another injury happens, they'll start bringing in for tryouts.
Yeah. I'm just concerned with Miller coming back from a hamstring injury. You already know you got an injury with Jamal Williams. And Kamara not being available. I'm curious to see what happens. It's a short week, so it's even if you sign somebody on Tuesday or Wednesday, they're not going to be ready to play on Sunday. So I can see them waiting a week to see what you got when Kamara comes back against Tampa. But to me, I think there's a possibility they bring a guy like Darnell Williams in if they see that Tony Jones struggled and if Kendre Miller really doesn't bounce back well from his injury. That's the only thing I could see them doing that with. So anyway, it's something to watch for this weekend. Final predictions: Packers Saints. What do you think the score will be, and what do you think is going to be? What do you think is going to happen in that game?
I think it's probably. I wouldn't be shocked if it was a little more of the same. Saints offense kind of struggles to get out of the gates and dominate, but pull it off with some great second half adjustments. I'm wondering how they're going. But my biggest thing I want to know is how they're going to attack Jordan Love early because he hasn't faced that yet. He hasn't gone against a defense that is going to put him on the heels and have him, really try. Bettings have the Saints as 2-point underdogs. So I find that to be interesting.
But, yeah, because you get 3 points just for hosting the game.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think the Saints are probably going to pull it out. It's going to be enough. I think it's going to be close, but I think it's going to be similar to the Tennessee game where whoever gets to 21 first, blackjack is going to win. And I think the Saints are going to win 23-17.
Yeah, the hard part is going to be for me is the offense. How well does the offensive line protect Carr? I think that I think their defensive front can handle um, the Packers. I think they can put a lot of pressure on Jordan Love. This will be a good game for the defense to score touchdowns, and I mean sack, strip, fumble kind of game. Um,
Pick sixes.
Interception, pick sixes, yeah, that kind of stuff. Because I think that's what's going to get the Saints offense or kind of cover for the shortcoming of the Saints offense until Kamara comes back the following week. Um, so I'm going to say this is probably going to be a 23, like you said, 23-21 kind of game, a close game. But I think the Saints, I say 21. I probably should say more like 10 because I really think, depending on the injury report, if the Packers don't have Jones, the other running back, I think the Packers are in big trouble because I think they're going to struggle to move the football. So this is going to be a close game, though. This is going to be one of those games that the Saints are going to need big plays to break it open, and I'm counting on the defense to make that play. Yeah, I expect Dillon to start, but I'm not worried about A.J. Dillon with this defensive front because they can turn him sideways. I think this is the kind of game that Demario Davis loves, and he's going to be an impact player. And I think they get a lot of sacks on Jordan Love this week, and I think they can force some turnovers. So I think the Saints are going to win this game. I think this is going to be the first 3-0 start since the 2013 season. I said before the year began, once we knew what Kamara's suspension was, if they started out the first 3 games without Kamara at 2-1, that's great. We couldn't go 1-2. Well, you're not going to go 1-2. You're going to go 2-1 at worst, 3-0 at best. I think they start 3-0, rolling into the Tampa Bay game, where that's going to be the big game of the week because Tampa probably wins again this week, and it'll be the showdown game. And it'll show all the footage or all the stuff, the trouble Dennis Allen has given Tom Brady with the Bucs, but Fox will love that. A big showdown between the Bucs and the Saints, both undefeated teams. So we'll see how that plays out.
Mm-hmm. And I think so. I'm kind of keeping an eye on the injury report. So they're probably going to get wide receiver 1 Christian Watson back from a hamstring injury. He's a tall, speedy guy. Aaron Jones might not be there. That's something to really monitor. He's probably going to be a real game time decision. And maybe left tackle David Bakatari. He's dealing with a knee injury. He's going to be another game time decision. But they're probably not going to have, like I said, they're not going to have their left guard. And I don't know how their defensive health is looking.
Yeah, I like our matchup, our defensive line versus their offensive line. So
absolutely,
we'll see how this goes. Anyway, thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you next time under the Dome. Good night, everybody.